welcome everyone to the panel discussion on future leadership, focusing on how new technologies and innovation are shaping recruitment, of course, diversity, equity and inclusion trends, and ultimately how to attract and retain talent. I do apologise for half the audience, I will do this to you at some point. For those of you that weren't able to attend the Women Automotive Summit yesterday upstairs, we had the fantastic privilege of welcoming over 400 attendees to our first US Summit. The Women Automotive Network is a global community of 39,000 from 108 countries. We inspire, empower and connect women and of course their allies in the automotive industry to try to make a more inclusive and diverse world. I'm Stephanie May. Got the great pleasure today of having a fantastic panel discussion with Jennifer Brace, Chief Futurist of Ford Motor Company, Brenda Faurote, VP of Stellantis, and Marian Maroki, who's a recent graduate representing General Motors today. I'll pass it over to you, Jennifer. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi. Jen Brace, so I am the Chief Futurist at Ford Motor Company, which means I have a very cool title, but nobody knows what it means. And I'm okay with that. It means what we do is we track trends, we look to the future, we help teams prepare for a future that is uncertain. So we help them by basically stress testing their strategies against different future scenarios. I've got 20 years experience at Ford. Somehow that happened overnight. My background is in engineering. I started in engineering and then spent some time in marketing. And then I also spent 5 years out in Silicon Valley in our Palo Alto lab, getting to kind of live in that world for a bit too.
Hi everyone, my name is Marian Maroki. I just recently graduated from Wayne State University last May. I dual majored in global supply chain and marketing management. Currently at General Motors, I'm in their track rotational program, which means every 6 months I rotate into a different position within the global purchasing and supply chain. And right now I am in purchasing as an exhaust systems buyer. It's not the sexiest title in the world, but there's a lot going on right now. And I've had a few different internships in the past. I've interned at Magna, interned at Tesla, and I've interned at Plastic Omnium. So just really excited to be here.
Hi everybody, my name's Brendan Faurote. I attended College for Creative Studies, which is an art and design school for those of you that don't know here in the Detroit area. So I've been with Stellantis around 30 years, so quite a long time. Again, it happened overnight, but yeah, time flies. So in my current role, I'm in charge of advanced design for the North American brands, so Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. And in that role, again, with a lot of the work that you mentioned, just looking at future trends, future customers, anticipating needs in more of that 10-year time frame from today. More of the short and midterm work is what the production studios focus on, and our group in advance focuses a little bit more on that 10-year horizon. So a little bit about me, and happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. So Jen, you highlighted Chief Futurist. Can you go in a little bit more detail? You've had 20 years, 5 years in Silicon Valley. What does it really mean? And within your career, future leadership, what changes have you experienced? And maybe reflecting on the next 5 to 10 years, what do you think we can expect?
Sure, yeah, so in 20 years, and starting out in engineering, right, as a woman in engineering, it was not uncommon to be the only female in the room. I'm guessing you might still, do you still have that? I hope it's not as bad. So we've certainly seen some changes as time has progressed. We're seeing more women step into the role, and what I'm seeing is more women feeling empowered. I think that there's been a lot of strides made from that perspective. We're seeing more in leadership as well. In terms of my own journey and the fact that I spent some time in Silicon Valley, which is always, it's a very different perspective and approach than I was used to in Michigan. My whole career had been in Dearborn. I laugh because at the time, I was in my mid-30s, and I had gone from being usually one of the younger people on the team in Dearborn, and then I went out to Silicon Valley, and I was suddenly like a senior, one of the older people in my mid-30s, because it was a very kind of young, early in career lab, which made sense. We wanted a bunch of fresh, new ideas coming in, so that was a particularly eye-opening experience to suddenly have to make that mental shift. And then in terms of thinking about the future, we are continuing to see more diversity. I love that we're getting not just diversity of ethnicity, background, things like that, but we're getting a lot of diversity in terms of experience from different industries coming into automotive, and it's pushing us all in the right direction, and it helps to bring that kind of analogous thought that's coming from other industries, bringing them into automotive. So what I see is a lot more kind of movement between industries, and I feel like that makes us all better. It makes us move faster. Sometimes, while we're kicking and screaming, saying we're not ready to move that fast yet, but it's good, right? That leads to progress.
So I've got two questions already for you, sorry. Before we move on to kind of the new recruits, and Brandon's going to talk about some of the latest recruitments you've done from the gaming and the fashion industry. You've already mentioned the younger generation, and suddenly going from the youngest to the oldest. Was there anything that you remark from your time in Silicon Valley that you learned from this younger generation before we obviously ask Marian for her thoughts?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things I learned was often to bite my tongue, because we had a lot of younger people come in and they would throw out an idea, and it was quick. It was often an idea that we had talked about in the past, that maybe we have tried, and what I wanted to not do was tell them no right away, because I wanted to see, sometimes they had a different approach, sometimes they had a different way of tackling the same problem that we think that we don't know how to solve, or we think that we tried and there's no light there. So there was a lot of literally me trying to bite my own tongue and learn from them. And then this one's just kind of funny, the other funny thing that would happen out there, very common at a company like Ford that's got this huge long legacy and tenure, people will introduce themselves and say, I've been at Ford for 20 years, and everybody in the room will go, yeah, that's great. And out in Silicon Valley, I learned to stop introducing myself with my tenure, because if I said I had been at the company for 12 years, people were like, why? Oh my God, why? Oh, why would you stay anywhere that long? It was a completely different perspective. So I also learned, again, biting my tongue was maybe one of the things I learned there.
Sure, yeah, just to elaborate on the question, you talked a little bit about the fashion industry, about the gaming industry. So a lot of what we've seen over the years, when I first started with the company, things were a little more simple then, right? And so the automobile has changed greatly since I started with the company, and it's more complex. There's many more specific areas of the vehicle. There's many more specialties. So we've started to develop teams that are more cross-functional. For example, within our UX and UI area, we do have a very diverse group of people from, as you mentioned, gaming. We have researchers, we have psychologists, we have a very diverse group, focused on that experience. And so I think that diversity, both as you mentioned earlier, and also the diversity in their expertise, I think really it enables everybody to collaborate in a stronger way and learn from each other, versus being so compartmentalized. And I think over time that's really been an evolution in our industry for sure.
We talked about the importance beforehand of the balance of insiders and outsiders, and how much the automotive industry is changing now. It's all about collaboration, cooperation. There's even new words for partnerships happening. Are there any specific positive effects, maybe some case studies that you can really bring and share with the audience?
Yeah, I think honestly it's really about the teamwork and working together, and as you mentioned, sometimes you have to bite your tongue and listen. I think when I first started, again, I think we had a culture where there were more bosses versus, I feel like things are evolving, more in a way of teamwork and mentorship and coaching, I would say. And so I think that's been a big change, and I think within that, again, the expertise that everybody brings, I think there's a much more open culture to listen more so than dictating from above. And I think that that culture, that up and down communication, really has helped things. I think it's a very big difference from when I first started.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm going to add on to that because you mentioned the up-down culture, and especially what we're seeing, especially when somebody comes in from the outside. Often they're brought in a leadership position, but they are so open. They want to hear, they want to learn. They recognize that they're coming in from a new industry, and while they've got new ideas, they also want to hear and learn while they're there. So that creates, I think, that two-way conversation really nicely because they want to know what they don't know. And then, of course, they're able to kind of add on to that because they're bringing in a lot of expertise and knowledge from an outside company. And it makes us all stronger.
So Marian, pressure on you now, representing the younger generation, and I'm going to ask about some of the stereotypes of the Gen Z. Prioritizing experience over money, wanting instant gratification. We've talked about learning from the younger generation. You've had an amazing internship history already. Every 6 months, changing programs within GM. What would you like to share? What do you think we can learn from you?
I think, going back to, biting your tongue, I feel like I have to do that also because as the younger generation, as honestly like a new person in corporate, it's a little challenging to voice my opinion right off the rip because I don't want to overstep, and I feel like I'm getting a little more comfortable now, just speaking up when I think I need to, still sharing my ideas, but biting my tongue. I think it's important to have prudence in the workplace. Going back to instant gratification, I think that is a huge thing within Gen Z and even like the later generations. But I think that isn't totally our fault. I think it has to do a lot with social media, and then it also has to do with the effects of COVID-19. Just being at home and like having honestly nothing to do, and then the uprise of TikTok and Instagram and everything else. There's a lot of benefits to social media, but I can see where, VPs or directors can look at our generation and think, oh, they just, they're here because they just want to get paid. And I think there should be a balance because there are some people who think it's okay to just go to work and just do your job and then move on. But I really think we're misunderstood in the sense that we want to be there because we want to learn and we want to grow, and we are the future of automotive. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure if the audience have any questions already whilst we're putting the spotlight on Marian. No? Okay, super. So tell us, what attracted you to the automotive industry? Women Automotive Network, we're representing women and their allies. It's still a heavily male-populated industry, and yet you chose to join.
So I was actually a human resource major before I switched to supply chain and marketing, and I had an internship at a tier 2 supplier, Unique Fabricating, and I just realized that I really want to be in this industry because it's not boring. There's always something new happening, and there's always a new trend. And then when I switched my major to supply chain, I realized how much of an impact that I can have, or that supply chain can have, on the entire world, but especially in automotive. If we go back to COVID-19, there was a lot that happened in the automotive industry that we're still being affected by it to this day. So I think that's what attracted me, just the ever-changing environment, and that nothing stays the same, and that I have a new problem every day. It's never the same problem.
Amazing.
They never stop coming. They never stop coming.
I'm going to ask you then, why have you stayed in the industry? Because from our side, it's not just about attracting the talent, is it? It's about retaining it. We did a poll a couple of weeks ago with the network, and 51% of our community were considering to leave. So I think it's pretty impressive that you've not just had 20 years, but 20 years in the same company. So what's the success? What do we need to learn?
So the answer I give most people is I continue to have really interesting opportunities. And opportunities that I wouldn't have expected. I have the job of chief futurist. Zero complaints, right? And getting to work in such a cool space, and I get to spend my time doing a lot of thinking about what we see happening around the world and what it might mean. How do we connect those dots? If we see new trends in mental health, in Gen Z and their way that they work, how do we connect it back to why Ford should care? So I get to do a lot of that, which is fascinating. I always say I wasn't a great futurist from the beginning because I never saw that as part of my future, joining automotive. But what I did know really early on was that within the automotive space, there are so many different elements that go into making a vehicle that finding interesting work was easy, quite frankly. It wasn't difficult. I knew that I didn't necessarily want to work on, the engines or the brake pads. I wasn't a big gearhead coming into the industry. But there's plenty of those, and that's okay. We need other people that can help round that out. So that, for me, I continue to have interesting opportunities and roles, and what's so cool about being in automotive is that you're impacting a huge part of somebody's life. Their car, it's usually the second most expensive thing that they purchase behind a home, and it's a big impact on how they go about their day, and it has a lot of touch points. And so being able to be part of a brand that is touching people's lives so regularly is part of the reason why I stay.
Yeah, similar answer. I think challenging projects for sure. The work is obviously one of the main reasons you go to work, is that challenge and the idea of accomplishing something as a team and as an individual. So I think that's number one. Number two, I would say, is the idea of my ideas, my contribution being valued. So I see that from my direct boss. I see that from other people in the company, and so that certainly is a key thing, that makes you stay, right? I'd say the third probably is the ability to help, as you mentioned, the next generation, come through, because you do want to, in any job that you have, you want to be able to bring the company, the team, into the future. It's not an individual sport, it's a team sport. I think, if I was in it for myself, I probably would have left and gone somewhere else, much earlier. But the idea of helping the team forward, and I think that's within our culture, within our company as well. That strong teamwork is certainly something that, makes me stay.
We talked in the panel prep about surviving and going back to work after COVID, and how companies have learnt to balance home life balance, hybrid working. What else is needed to kind of respect the younger generation, to respect women and men's roles, and ultimately improve that working life?
Just continuing to be a more flexible culture. I think that has really helped. Right now, General Motors has a 3-day in the office rule, and then we work from home on Mondays and Fridays, and I think that has been great, and most people are really enjoying that, because, some people have kids, some people have, other responsibilities, and it's easier to kind of maybe block off some time, run an errand, come back, pick up the kids. So I've seen a lot of benefit from that, just to continue to be more flexible with the employees, as long as obviously the work is getting done and there's just respect on, letting your manager know. I think that has been one of the best things that came after COVID.
And does Stellantis have similar programs like that with hybrid working?
Yeah, we do. And it depends on the job. Obviously, some people need to be at work full-time. Others can be at home all the time. And then, of course, there's the hybrid situation that you mentioned. So, yeah, that is working for us. To your point, COVID really forced it. It was something that we had talked a lot about prior to COVID, but never really took that step to act on it and enable it. And so COVID really did force it, and it proved that, to your point, the work was getting done. And again, we believe that there still is opportunities for collaboration that are important for people to get together, come together, look at physical things. Sometimes in my line of work, we do a lot virtually, a lot in the digital space. But looking at things physically and then interacting, one-to-one is also important too.
Any other lessons that we learned from COVID?
Oh, COVID. We love COVID. I'll be honest, because we push people to think about the future looking different than today. COVID made my job a lot easier because everything changed overnight, right? But in terms of the working, I second everything that I heard from my two colleagues here, that it has shifted a bit of the way that we approach work. I think it's humanizing in a way too. One of the benefits I found throughout COVID, once we shifted to doing so much remotely, in a lot of ways we got closer with our colleagues because we knew their pets, we knew their spouses, we knew their kids, they were showing up on camera. So I was looking for those elements of really kind of getting to know people a bit more. So to me, that was one of the benefits. Now we're bringing that into the office. We're doing similar, where some people are hybrid, some people are fully remote, and some people are, fully in the office. And we're trying to figure out, for the people who are fully remote, how often do we bring them in? How often do we make sure that we are giving them those opportunities to have some of the face-to-face interactions, that so that they don't feel like they're being left out, they don't feel like their careers are potentially impacted by not physically being there when everybody else is suddenly back in the office. So we're kind of working through some of those things right now, and ultimately what it's led to is enabling some better balance, and that's where I think even the hours that I see people keeping when we're on the in-office days have shifted a bit compared to pre-COVID, and I feel like that's a step in the right direction. I feel like we will continue to see that, and when I think about some of the things that we're seeing and having expected from younger generations, especially, is enabling that work-life balance. Like I want to work to live, not live to work.
Yeah, and you have to love what you do, and then it's not your job, right? I think it was Steve Jobs that said that. Perfect. So what other initiatives does Ford, GM, and Stellantis have that can help retain the talent that you guys have?
Well, goodness, I think what Marian's doing with the rotational programs, is such a fantastic way. I actually went through it 20 years ago. Oh, so long ago. But it's such a great way within a large company to get an understanding of what it really is, where you could end up. It's so hard when you're in school to understand the inner workings of a big company and really understand what any of the jobs are. So I think programs like that are phenomenal. Continuing to partner with universities to get that talent identified early, to create projects. We're doing different things with universities to give them projects to do with us, or to let us mentor, robotics teams and things like that. I feel like those are excellent ways. And then so much of it is just listening to what's important to new people coming in. How do we continue to meet the needs or the expectations that they have when it comes to whether it's benefits, work-life balance. I think all of those things, we're seeing a lot of new benefits come about with respect to helping with planning parenting and freezing your eggs, IVF, pet insurance. We're seeing all of those types of things, looking at people as a whole, and I feel like those are all useful, right? Yeah. When we are thinking about how we keep people around.
What would you say is the most important reason that someone might leave the automotive industry? Marian?
An important reason why they might leave the automotive industry. I don't think the automotive industry is for everyone because it is very fast-paced. It's very, it can be very stressful at times. I'm sure other industries are just as stressful, but I think there's a lot of pressure sometimes to, you know, feels like we're saving lives sometimes, which in a way we are because we want to produce safe vehicles. But I think sometimes it can be a little overwhelming for someone who is not used to being in a fast-paced environment. I think that would be the only reason I would leave. But I love the fast-paced environment, so I don't think I'd ever leave.
Yeah, I would say with our area, you know, we do have people that would, you know, potentially go to competitors, typically not to a different industry, usually, and you know, if you're a car designer, usually you're going to stay in the car design world, but it does happen sometimes. But, you know, I would say it's largely, if it's more about the individual, you know, because again, I think the culture is there, the culture is positive. It's more about being able to have your voice heard. I mentioned that earlier. You know, it's a team sport, but people have individual goals as well. And so I think if someone's not seeing that path to the future, that could be a reason. You know, sometimes we hear about pay, but usually it's, you know, I would say that kind of a thing. So I think we want to make sure that we have people, we have the discussions, as you said, talking to each other about career paths and about the future. And we all know the future is hard to predict and you know, may take different roads, but you know, I think if you can have those conversations and understand people's interests, their goals, so that we can help satisfy their goals along with the company's goals, then it's a win-win, and we keep people together as a team.
Just going back to what you said earlier about retaining talent, something that I noticed at General Motors when I first started is I wasn't like looked down upon being the greenest in the room. If anything, I was encouraged to set up meetings with my directors and executive directors to get to know them and to like introduce myself and to learn more about how they became a director, an executive director in our space. So that is a huge way of keeping and retaining talent. I was even speaking to one of my directors a few weeks ago, and she was saying that before we'd have staff meetings, and in our staff meetings it would only be the directors and managers sitting at the table, and now it's whoever gets there first. So I found that really interesting because it's not just an up-down culture, it's more, you know, we're all together as a team learning from each other. So I've appreciated that being so new to General Motors, and like just the way they've included our track program.
By the way, this is a difficult thing to do because the deadlines, they keep coming. Everybody's under a tight timeline, you know, and so to have the conversations that I mentioned, and for you to have those conversations as well, it is one of the hardest things to do because it's tough to find the time, and you have to remind yourself, you know, continually, because there's always something else to do, you know, and so you got to prioritize.
We were talking about this quite a lot yesterday, bringing it back to kind of women in the automotive industry and the importance of diversity, having internal networks, having external networks, and how actually some of the time, you know, it's not even your day-to-day job, it's just a passion, and physically or, you know, mentally there's not the time set aside for these types of programs. Do any of you have set aside, you know, whether it be town halls or quarterly meetings to kind of review mentorship programs or review talents?
Yeah, so we absolutely do that with all of our employees within our organization. We do department-wide meetings where each manager would have to have a talent, or like a progression discussion with each of their employees to make sure that we are understanding what their aspirations are, what skills they want to develop, what they want to work on. And then what we do is we share it across the leadership team to make sure everybody's aware of, hey, how can we help this person? What are they looking for? Where do we think they need to develop? What are their aspirations, so that we can, it helps, right, having more people aware of what goals are, so that then you've got more people looking for opportunities. So we do that, and I've been really pleasantly surprised with the way that those conversations go in terms of helping people along the way.
We do as well. Typically have town halls with our team, and have individual discussions as well, obviously. But we talk about succession planning, talent development, employee talent journeys, and on a regular basis. So it is within the HR framework within the company, obviously. But there's a lot of those conversations I think you can have with individuals in the hallway or at I'll date myself, the water cooler. But there's those kinds of things where I think getting to know people, on an individual basis is important too, in a more casual way.
And that brings me, to talk about the importance of mentorship. The Women Automotive Network, one of the strongest things that we do is the mentorship program. And we talked about the benefits that the mentors can get, as well as the mentees. We kind of, I think I introduced the idea to you about reverse mentorship, and how the senior management should start having mentors from the younger generation. Do you guys, have you been mentors, mentees yourself? Want to share experiences why people should get involved in mentorship programs?
We do have, and I'm sure Ford GM as well. And it's one of those things where personally I think the mentor and mentee both have a big benefit. And whether you have separate programs for up and down, or if it's just one mentorship program, either way, both parties are going to get something out of it. And I do believe that it's also valuable to have a mentor-mentee relationship that's not necessarily in the same area. So we try to do that as well. We try to have this outside design office as well. So I know Ralph, our big boss, he does a lot of mentorship with people outside of design. So I think that sort of, again, it goes back to the cross-functional working together piece.
Just about to say, it goes back to their creativity, learning from others, learning from outside of the automotive industry.
Yeah, I completely agree, and the ability to have that be a two-way conversation I think is so powerful, and hopefully empowering, especially for the younger generation, that it's not just always information coming in one direction, but it does become that learning opportunity. Sometimes I apologize to the younger people on the team where I'm like, I hate to make you represent an entire generation, but Gen Z, blah, 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 did this or says this, like, help me understand what's going on there. Or sometimes I need her to translate. What does this mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I have a mentor currently at General Motors, but I think someone told me that you shouldn't have just one mentor, and you should have different mentors for different things, whether it's personal or professional. And I thought that was really intuitive because I feel like my current mentor, I can talk to him about specific things, but then there are other things that I would have maybe wanted to talk to someone else about. So having more than one mentor was the best idea I got in a while. So I'm always looking for mentors, and anyone can be a mentor.
I was about to ask, and that's mentorship program within General Motors, or you're looking outside as well?
Both.
So we're nearly at the end of the time. We've talked about how to retrain and attract talent. We've talked about the importance of partnerships with universities. We've talked about making it attractive. We've talked about opportunities and career progression, hybrid, COVID working, work-life balance, mentorship. Is there anything else maybe we can wisdom and impart to the audience? How else can we retain and attract talent? Any parting last words?
I'll just go. I think transparency goes a long way. Just being honest and transparent within the team, and then also from senior leadership about the goals and deliverables that are expected. I think just honesty and transparency is the biggest insight to retaining and keeping talent. Because if there's no trust between people within the organization, then people are not going to want to work for the organization. So just being honest and transparent.
Yeah, and I would add that it's a lot about the communication. It's a lot about understanding what's working and what's not, and how we can continue to get better, and how we can continue, whether it's offering opportunities, mentorship, different working structures. All of those things are so critical to understanding. So instead of trying to maybe forcing everybody to fit into the mold of what's been done before, being kind of open to those conversations and understanding what's going to help keep the right people in the roles that we need and help give them opportunities at the company.
Yeah, I think maybe I would just add, it's a business, right? And so we have to deliver on our goals with strong results. So, but with that being said, the company's made up of people, and you have to enjoy the work. You have to enjoy the people. It has to be fun. If you're in a job that's not fun, it's not going to go well. You know what I mean? Your results are not going to be what they need to be, and as we talked about earlier, people will leave and go other places. So I think at the end of the day, you really just have to create an environment that is a creative environment that people can really have fun and enjoy each other and learn from each other, and as a result, make the company's goals better. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. We do have a couple of minutes. Are there any audience questions? Yeah?
Thank you. I have a question for Jen. What is the... oh wow, this is short. Okay. What is the most exciting innovation that is happening in the industry and Ford?
The most exciting innovation.
She can't tell you.
No, I know.
Something you can be public about.
Well, certainly the most kind of exciting thing that we can't stop talking about right now is AI and the impact that it may or may not be having moving forward. I am making no claims as to what exactly that will mean for us, but I would say keep watching. Other questions? I see one back here.
Thank you. Thank you for your passion and bringing the big three from Michigan together. So speaking of addressing maybe the changing of shirts that I've heard talked about within the big three and with SDV, with software-defined vehicles, seeing people just swapping out amongst the top OEMs. Was curious how that is being addressed by each.
Well, I think you're always going to have that. And when I look at, the area, at least, within design, I think that there's less movement in design than I would see in other areas of the company or perhaps other industries. So it's inevitable to happen. And, I think as we go forward, we just have to make sure that we're focused on celebrating the brands that we have within the company. We obviously have corporate goals, corporate vision for the company, but within the company, our strong brands are really what, our sales card is. So I feel like even if someone jumps to another company for whatever reason, they need to adopt the goals of the brands specifically. I mean, they'll have their own individual impact, obviously, but that's the key. That's the glue that holds at least Stellantis together, I feel.
Any other questions? I just have a question for Jennifer with regards to the topic itself, balancing traditions and innovation. Ford being a family business, owned company, as well as having a rich tradition history related to the brand itself. What makes Ford, do all of this with regards to innovation? I mean, what's the most standout thing which Ford drives the future? I'm curious to know.
I'm sorry, I want to make sure I understand the question. What's the standout thing for driving to the future?
Yeah, in terms of balancing all those interests, you know, having a rich tradition as well as the family business-owned traditions and all of that. You know.
Yeah, so balancing, thank you. So balancing the rich tradition that Ford has and trying to kind of be innovative and show up in new ways in the future. I think it's embracing the fact that we do have a legacy, right? That we have made some big leaps and changes in the past, and being able to lean into those and recognize what we're known for and what the brand stands for, and taking that into new spaces. So I don't think that they need to be in conflict with one another. I think that we want to take advantage of some of that and recognize that there is a lot of legacy and history within the brand, but part of that legacy is innovation and making big bets and continuing to do so moving forward.
And I think it's the same answer for Ford and GM as well as Stellantis. I think it's a common element with the big three that, you know, we have that history and we need to use it to our advantage, but have to adapt for the future, and we are. So.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, everyone in the audience. Any questions, we can be found at the Women Automotive Network stand in the corner. And hope you all have an amazing day. Enjoy AutoTech.